In this video, we're talking about cash money. We're talking about 5 ways to win with your finances as a worship leader. Yeah, we're talking about finances coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com, your daily dose of practical worship leading tips. If you want to find those tips, head over to Instagram or Facebook at Leading Worship Well, where I'm posting new worship leading tips every single day. There's also a website called leadingworshipwell.com where I've got over 900 posts now, and you can search through all of them. I don't talk about that very often. I usually just talk about Instagram and Facebook. That's besides the point. You're here on YouTube, so go ahead, hit subscribe down below, and let's get into it. Don't click away yet, all right? We're talking about finances today. And people in church do not like talking about the financial side of ministry. Money is like a swear word in the church. We just would rather not talk about it. That's like this personal thing. That's none of your business, Spencer. You don't need to know about my finances. I'll do whatever I want. Okay, that's fine. You do whatever you want, but I'm going to be talking about finances. Nobody's talking about this, all right? I'm talking about finances for worship pastors, really ministry in general, really life in general. And this is a video that I've wanted to make for a really long time because personal finance is something that I'm pretty passionate about. And I've seen the fruits of focusing on it in my life, which I'll share maybe at some other point, maybe a little bit in this video. We'll see what I get into. But listen, guys, we've got to get our money right. And people aren't going to tell you this in the worship leading world. They'll teach you how to plan set lists. They'll teach you how to recruit worship team members. And that's fine. Those are important. I talk about that all the time. That's me, right? I talk about that stuff all the time. But when it comes to being in ministry as a full-time, part-time worship pastor, getting our money right is so important, because when we don't handle our finances well, what happens is we end up thinking that we need way more money to survive than we actually need. And I'll break down what that looks like as we go throughout this video. But in the end, when you think that, you end up feeling underpaid, undervalued, and in many cases, a lot of pastors leave the ministry because of that. They think, I can't survive on a ministry budget. I need more money from my church. And maybe do. Oftentimes I think pastors are underpaid, but you're never going to get rich being in ministry, all right? That's not the goal. We understand that. And so the key is to handle what money we do have well, because that's going to allow you to take care of your family and yourself while not being a burden to your church. We have to be good stewards of what we have financially so that we can continue to serve our church as well. And let me just share some of my story. And I want to show you the importance of stewarding your money well. And I'm not saying I have it all figured out. I'm not saying like I'm some financial genius, but I'm going to share with you these 5 things today that I have focused on in my life, and they've been so beneficial for me. So if you don't know my story, first of all, I led worship for 2 or 3 years, full-time worship pastor in a smaller church, and they paid me a good amount. I'm very grateful for what they paid me. At the same time, I didn't need as much from them to survive because I handled my money well. And so when I stepped out of that position, and I stepped out of that position about 10 months ago now, and I've been able to focus on leading worship well and nothing else because I handled my finances well. So what you've experienced over the past 10 months of leading worship well and me being able to pour myself into this is a direct result of proper, or what I consider proper, handling of my finances. I didn't have any income for these past 10 months, and I was still able to serve you guys and to serve the church in general because God blessed me with the wisdom to handle my finances well. And I'm not trying to sound arrogant whenever I'm talking about this. I'm just trying to be authentic in what I'm talking about. I truly believe that God has revealed these things to me at the appropriate time in my life so that I could do what I've done for the past 10 months. And it's been amazing. And honestly, I think I'm about to, well, I'm not sure when this video is coming out. It might have already happened, but I've got the potential to step into another worship leading position. And this time it can be part-time because I have handled my finances well. And I don't say this all to brag. I'm saying all of this because I want you to see the picture that you don't need to make as much money as you think you need to make if you implement some of these things that I'm about to talk about. And you can get ahead in life, not like I need $1 million to be satisfied, but you can be satisfied with less when you handle what you have well. So I'm going to leave the intro at that. I know I just rambled on for a while. I'll put a timestamp down below for those of you who didn't want to watch that. But yeah, let's get into these 5 principles. And I know this is a little bit different, but we're talking about a different topic today. So just before we get into that, let me know, do you have a budget? We're going to be talking about a budget a lot in this video today. So just let me know down in the description below. Do you follow a budget? Yes or no? Why or why not? Let me know. I'll talk to you in a second. Thanks so much for sharing your answer down below. Let's get into these 5 keys to winning with your finances as a worship leader. So are you ready to dive into ministry financials? It's so exciting. We love to talk about it. We're so comfortable talking about it. Guess what? I'm comfortable talking about it. I'm not uncomfortable talking about money. So let's do this together, all right? And I'm just going to tell you at the beginning, most of these concepts are based off of what Dave Ramsey talks about. So I'll link his stuff down in the description below. I'll link to his YouTube channel and the book that he wrote. It's really helped me. I believe in what he teaches. So most of this is based off of that. But if you're not a Dave Ramsey fan, like, it's still going to be beneficial. So let's get into the first key to winning with your finance as a worship leader, and it is this. You've got to have a budget. You've got to know where your money is going before you spend it. And so often, I talked about this at the beginning, unless you skipped the intro, you didn't hear it, but we think that we need so much more money than we actually need because we don't know how much money we actually need. We just have this general ballpark idea, and we see the bills come in, and we see, I paid this much for groceries and this much for gas, and it all comes in and it's a jumbled mess. Well, a budget allows you to, number one, get a bigger picture of your finances. So this is hands down the first step. The first step to winning with your finances is actually knowing where your financials stand. So how do you do it? You sit down and you write down everything that you can about your finances. You say, this is how much my car payment is. This is how much my credit card payment is. This is how much I spend on utilities. This is my mortgage, or this is my rent, or this is how much I spend on groceries. All of this stuff, you sit down and lay it out. And I'm going to recommend using Dave Ramsey's app called Every Dollar. Just go to everydollar.com. I'll link it in the description below. There's other ones you can use as well, but that's the one that I use. I just find it the most intuitive and I like it, so it's good. And so whenever you create an account for Every Dollar, it'll actually show you like some of these main categories, and it'll help you plan out that stuff. So go through, look at your finances for last month, and you're only really going to have to do this like once to put in the work to actually set up a budget, and then you can just carry it over month to month. But look at last month and see what your expenses were and what your income was. That's going to tell you the whole picture, and that's the starting point of creating a budget. So break it down as much as you can. This is how much I pay for Netflix or whatever. Include everything. Account for everything. If you want to manage your money well, you've got to actually know how much is coming in and how much is coming out. So set up a budget, and then from there, you look at what you've got. You look at your financial picture and say, okay, this is what I'm spending on each individual thing. Do I actually want to spend that much on this thing? And then you get to make the decision. You see, a budget is not restricting you. A budget it's not like I can only spend this much. You create the budget. You get to create You get to decide where you spend your money. So a budget is not evil. It's just a tool that you can use to help you achieve the financial goals that you want to achieve. And so do that. Set it up. And we're going to talk about what those financial goals should be here in a second. But this is the first part. Create a monthly budget. And by the way, I can create more content on this if you guys are interested in it. I have a feeling most of you aren't interested in it, so I'll just leave it at this face value, and you can go check out Dave Ramsey, his channel and his resources in the description below. But if you want more, let me know in the comments below, and I'll make more. But yeah, just you need a budget. You need to know where your money's going and where it's coming from, so that you can see a full financial picture of your finances. And then from there, before the month begins, you want to plan out where it's going. You want to have a plan for your money before the month begins. And that's where this idea of Every Dollar, the app that I recommend is called Every Dollar. That's where the name comes from, is the fact that you want to account for every dollar before you actually spend it at the beginning of the month. So before, when's this video coming out? This is coming out September 11th. So let's say for the next month in October, before October comes, you want to say, okay, this month I'm spending this much on groceries. I have this much dedicated towards eating out at restaurants. I have this much for fun, whatever. Like I said, you get to decide what your budget is. Your budget doesn't tell you what to do. You tell your budget what to do, but you got to make good decisions along the way. So set that budget up, okay? That's the first step. Now let's go a little bit more in depth about what should be in your budget. All right, on to the second key of winning with your finances. And we've talked about setting up a budget. Now let's talk about actually what's in your budget. And I firmly believe that this next key should be at the top of your budget, and it's this: giving. You can call it tithing, you can call it giving, whatever. But the first thing that should be in your budget, it sounds backwards, but is giving money away. It should be an unselfish giving where you are giving back to a church, your church probably, right? Or in some way to build the kingdom of God. You should be dying to self and saying, God, I trust you with this. It doesn't have to be all of your income, right? God doesn't ask that. I think tithing is a good place to start. That 10% mark is probably a good place to start if you've never given before. And then you can ramp it up more if you feel comfortable with that. But yeah, give money away. It feels uncomfortable. And maybe you're like, Spencer, you know what? My expenses are so high right now. Like I can't give 10% of my income away. And I hear you, but listen, this is what I've learned in my life, and I've seen it over and over again. If I can't live on 90% of my income, I can't live on 100% of my income. If I can't live on 90% of my income, I can't live on 100% of my income, because it's not about the amount that you make. It's about stewarding it well. And so you need to make that commitment. Like, we are called to do that, not just as worship leaders, but as Christians, to sacrifice a little bit, live a life of sacrifice. And maybe for this season, you have to give up Netflix, and it's a little bit uncomfortable, right? Netflix doesn't cost that much, but you get the idea, right? You got to make sacrifices. What do you want more? Do you want Netflix and Hulu Plus and all of that stuff? Or do you want to give? Like, giving is the essential piece to starting to get our finances in order. It starts there, because first of all, that's the first part of your budget. So it gets you in this mindset of, okay, this is how much I'm bringing in, and this is how much I'm going to give away. That's the first part. But then also, like, I understand I'm going to have to make sacrifices in this budget, and I want to make the first sacrifice to God. I want to give God the first fruits of my sacrifice if I'm having to sacrifice other things. So put that first line in your budget. Just set it at 10%. I'm telling you, this isn't a prosperity thing, but God is going to bless you. Like, God is not going to allow you to give away 10% of your income and then struggle All right, 10% isn't that much. All right, and it depends how much you make. I understand there's different ratios, but I'm telling you, if you can't live on 90%, you can't live on 100%. So just give to your church, especially if you're on staff at your church. You should be giving to your church. So it sounds backwards, but the key to winning with your finances, number one, is to give. Let's move on to the third key. On to key number 3 to winning with your finances as a worship pastor, worship leader, person in general, is to be, and you should have seen this coming because I talked about Dave Ramsey at the beginning, is to be debt-free. And maybe that sounds ridiculous to you right now. Maybe you have so much debt that you have no idea. Like, that doesn't even sound feasible to you right now, especially if I just told you to give 10% of your income away. How are you ever going to reach that? Well, I'll let you know here in a second, but let me just paint you this picture of why you should be debt-free. First of all, the Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender. As Christians, we are called to be free. Not just, or we are made free, right? Like, not just spiritually, physically, but financially. Like, there can be financial freedom for us if we follow the ways that God has set up. I believe that. And so let me just paint this picture for you, all right? The average debt payment in America is $1,000 a month. That's just the average number. You know, that's an average of $500 car payment. That's student loans of like $350 and credit cards of $150. Those are the average debt payments in America. Add that up. That's $1,000 a month. Imagine if you had, so that's probably your story is what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to make you feel bad about that. I'm saying that that's the norm, but we are called to be countercultural. And so imagine if you had $1,000 more a month. Imagine what that would do in your giving, which we just talked about. How much more would you be able to give? How much more would you be able to do some of these other things that we're going to talk about, like saving for retirement and just living like a life without needing as much? Because $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month in the ministry world, that's so much money. Especially if you're leading in a small church and you're making like under $30,000 a year. That is like what, 60% of your income? And so my point is this: when it comes, I get messages from people all the time who are like, I want to get into ministry, but I'm worried about the money aspect of it. Like, I just don't see the money there. Like, I don't think that I can make a living. Or I've seen it in other pastors' lives. They're like, I have to work 2 or 3 jobs because I don't make enough money. And oftentimes, the reason is that they could have $12,000 more a year if they became debt-free. $12,000 a year if they became debt-free. That means you could stop working that second job and you could go into full-time ministry. That's the picture I'm trying to paint for you. If you sacrifice a little bit today and you become debt-free, and it takes work, and so here's how you do it. You list your, and this is straight from Dave Ramsey, you list your debts from smallest to largest. Look at the payments, your student loans, your credit cards, your car payment. What's the smallest one? Now we've got this budget, right? We've got our giving at the top of it. We've already committed 10% to that. Now you've got this other to spend. Obviously, you got to have a place to live. You got to have food to eat. You got to have gas in your car. So get the bare bones of those next in your budget, and then throw everything that you can at that smallest debt payment. Over and over and over again, and sacrifice. We need to sacrifice. We need to build resilience in sacrificing. It's going to be okay if you live without for a season of life, because you know what you're aiming towards. You're aiming towards financial freedom and being able to move into full-time ministry. Maybe that's what you want. So sacrifice. Throw all of that extra money that you have, and you will have extra money if you're serious about this, all right? Throw it all at your smallest debt. The next one, after you pay that off, and you're paying the minimum on these other debts that you have. Next, you pay that first debt off. Now you take that minimum monthly payment that you would have been paying, you add that to the extra amount that you were paying on top of that, and you throw it at the next debt, the next biggest debt or the smallest debt. From there, you do it again and again and again until you've knocked out all of your debts. And I'll link an article down below about this. Just, I want to point you to the appropriate resources. But you do this over and over again until you become debt-free. And I know that's not like a comprehensive guide on how to do it. Go check out the resource in the description below. I'm just trying to paint the picture for you. This is going to allow you to move into full-time ministry, and you aren't going to have to worry about, where am I going to get $12,000 extra a year? Or maybe your debt payment's even more than that. Where am I going to get that? You will have it. And God will bless you because you've handled your money well. And it's not a prosperity thing. It's not we need more money. It's good things lead to good things. So when we do things God's way, good things happen. That's just how it is. Why wouldn't God set things up so that good things happen, right? It's not karma. It's just good things lead to good things. God things lead to good things. So follow God's way. Be debt-free. The slave or the borrower is slave to the lender. So become debt-free. I can talk about that more in the future and share my story if you want. Once again, let me know in the comments below. Let's move on to number 4. The next key to winning with your finances is you've got to have an emergency fund. So things are going to happen in life that are, unexpected. You might lose your job. Your car might break down. You might have some health thing, right? Like, emergencies happen in life, and so we can either ignore them and act like they're never going to happen and we can never be prepared for them, or we can be a little financially conservative and have a little money stored up. And so whenever you're paying off your debt, Dave Ramsey recommends this. He recommends just having a $1,000 emergency fund. So you've got that set aside. That's protection. And then after you have that set aside, you pay off the debt and do what I talked about in the last point. So set up that. If you're not debt free and you've got, let's say you've got $40,000 in debt and you've got like $20,000 just sitting around, throw 19 of that on the debt. And I'm telling you, it's going to hurt at first, but then you're going to see the progress. And as long as you keep that understanding that, man, I'm going to have $1,000 more a month in however long this takes, like a year, that's going to be worth it. So throw that money at it and have a $1,000 emergency fund. Then from there, once you become debt free, and you will become debt free if you do this, it's going to take work, it's going to take time, but it'll happen if you focus on it. Once you do that, you build a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And this is just like, you just stow this away just in case anything happens. Like, imagine if you had 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses stored up somewhere. How much more confidence would that give you in your financial decisions and in just your ability to take a worship leading position or to step out of a worship leading position? That's kind of my story. Like, I was a worship leader at a church for 3 years. I stepped away from that position 10 months ago. I would have never been able to do that if I didn't follow these things that I'm talking about. And I needed to step out of that position. Like, I could have stayed there, but I needed to step out of it. And having the financial freedom to do that was just, I want that for you. I want you to be able to make decisions not based on I need money, but this is where God wants me to be and allows me to serve the church the best that I possibly can. So build an emergency fund. Once again, link in the description below. This isn't a full explanation of the whole plan. I'm just sharing with you the general principles. Let's move on to the 5th and final key. Finally, number 5 is to think about the future and save for retirement. And I know, like, don't store up wealth on earth, but that's not what I'm talking about. All right, I'm talking about leaving a legacy for your family, for whoever's coming after you. We want to leave the world a better place than when we first came in. We're all going to die someday. We're all going to go to heaven. And when I leave here, I want to leave something behind so that people can continue and not have to start from zero. So saving for retirement isn't about getting rich so that you can go on vacation whenever you turn 65 for the rest of your life. No, like, let's be legacy builders and think about how much more you can give to your church. Like, imagine whenever you pass away, if you could give like a significant amount to your church, how much of a blessing would that be to your church? Like, those are the things that I think about. It's not just about me being able to live take off work whenever I'm 55. No, like, I want to leave a legacy for the people that follow after me. Selflessness expands over many generations. I leave it to the next generation. They build on it and leave it to the next generation. Think of all the good that would multiply out of that. That's what I think about whenever I think about retirement. From the practical side of things, once you pay off your debt, this is what Dave Ramsey says, once you pay off your debt and you're debt free, start putting 15% of your income into a retirement fund. Link in the description below, more info about that. But I'm just trying to paint this picture for you guys, all right? That's the last key. I know this video was long. This video was different. I can do more in-depth teaching on this. This was just an overview. But I just want to, this is like literally the biggest thing that if I could teach worship leaders, apart from, the practical side of leading a team and leading worship and leading people in your church, like, this is it. And nobody talks on it. Nobody likes to talk about finances in ministry. So I just wanted to bring that up. Look into it, guys. Go buy Total Money Makeover and read it. And it's not just going to change your life, it's going to change your ministry if you follow these principles. And I have no vested interest in this. I want you to succeed financially so that you can do what God has called you to do without being inhibited by the financial side of things and being like, man, I have to make $75,000 a year at a church instead of I have to make $45,000 at a church. Like, that's a reality if you do these things. That's what I want to get across. So thanks for listening. I know this was a long, unusual video, but I just felt like talking about it. So if you don't want any more of these, I'm not going to make a bunch of these videos unless you want them, but just wanted to get this out here. So thanks so much for joining me today. If you have questions, send me a DM on Instagram, message on Facebook, email at spencer@leadingworshipwell.com. Leave me a comment below. I'd love to help you out with this stuff. I'm passionate about this. So if you need somebody in your corner cheering you on, I'm your guy. Until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.